I'd like to call this Tampa City Council meeting back to order. Roll call, please.
Carlson. Here. Hurtak. Clendenin.
Here.
Henderson. Vieira.
Here.
Miranda. And Maniscalco.
Here.
And Hurtak.
Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I said I wasn't going to be back, but I am. I had met with some folks on this. If y'all remember, we had passed a motion in City Council supporting Local 754 on this public records request. And without getting into it, we're still working on it, but I do believe in having deadlines on things so that we can move forward. So I do motion, number one, this is going to be for February 6th. And on that day, because I do have one staff report, I motion, well, let me first, I intend to motion to move my motion for local cemeteries cleaning from February 6th to March 27th. I'll do that secondly after this one passes, if it does. So I'm going to be making room on the agenda for that in keeping with our rules. That's number one. Number two is I motion for the appropriate City of Tampa departments to come and brief City Council on the prospective resolution of the public safety records request done by Tampa firefighters Local 754. Herein, representatives of the administration and or Tampa Fire Rescue and Local 754 will be present for this. I am very hopeful that we can resolve this issue before, but if we don't, I want this as a timeline, as a deadline. So that's it. And second, I will be motioning to take that off so that we have time on the agenda.
We have a motion from Councilmember Vieira, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye.
And thank you, Council. And then,
Oh, I'm sorry. Second was Carlson.
okay. And then secondly, I move my motion for report on cleaning local cemeteries from this February date to March 27th, consistent with the rules.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Vieira, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Thank you,
Aye.
Council. And that day on February 6th, we do have a number of fire items, including for Station 24 and hopefully getting that by October and a couple of other issues and whatnot. So thank you, Council. I will make true to my word and leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right.
Be gone. Thank you.
All right, we have our 1:30 public hearings we need to open up. Can I get a motion to open the 1:30 public hearing? Motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Carlson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Chairman, if
All
you
right.
can,
Yes, sir.
if you can, just a motion to receive and file the ex parte communications, if any, that have been
All right,
available
can I get
for
a
public
motion to
inspection.
receive and file?
I don't know. No ex parte or verbal communications, I take it?
No.
None, okay.
We have a
Thank you.
motion to receive and file those from who?
We got it.
Well, we got to, you just make the, all right.
So moved.
Motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Carlson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? If you have not been sworn in and you will be speaking on item number 53, please stand, raise your right hand, and we'll swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to provide is true and unbiased? Yes.
Nobody else is speaking on this item? Yeah, he's there. Okay, Mr. Cotton, do you want to go ahead and present 53?
Yes, sir, if I may.
Oh, I'm sorry. Come
Sure,
on.
Mr.
Yes,
please.
ma'am.
If I may.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Kamari Pettis-Malco from the legal department. Good afternoon. Item number 53 is a review hearing for the application SU1 2476 for the property located at 6801 North Orleans Avenue. This is brought on behalf of the petitioner Danielle Maza. She filed an application with the City of Tampa requesting for an extended family residence at her property. Staff denied the request on May 16th of 2024 on the basis that the application did not meet the code criteria outlined in 27-132, which is the specific requirements for an extended family residence. Staff will explain to you the reason, the basis of the denial, but in summation, they denied the application because it did not, the extended family residence does not meet the setback requirements. City Council, I provided you copies of Code Section 27-61 in your packet. City staff provided you in their staff report copies of 27-132, the regulations governing specific uses for specifically the extended family residence. 27-129, which are the general standards, and 27-130, which are the conditions and safeguards. I've also provided copies of the sample motion and the rules of procedure for City Council to conduct this review hearing. As outlined in Code Section 27-61, subsection J3, City Council should conduct a de novo. This is going to be a de novo standard of review, which means you are not limited to the information or documentation or evidence that was originally provided by staff. You can receive new information. Staff is online to give you an overview of the application, and after City Council hears all the evidence, City Council can take one of two actions: affirm the decision of the zoning administrator and deny the special use application for the extended family residence, or City Council can overturn the decision of the zoning administrator and therefore approve the application for the extended family residence. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Cotton.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cotton, go ahead, sir. Please state your name.
Eric Cotton, I have been sworn for the development coordination. If I can, may share my screen briefly.
Okay.
And
They'll make it bigger now. It's coming. There it is. Go ahead, sir.
thank you again, Eric Cotton, development coordination. This is, as Ms. Pettis-Mackel indicated, this is a petition for review for SU 12476 for property located at 6801 North Orleans Avenue. Again, the zoning is RS50. Ms. Pettis-Mackel already went over some of this, but the zoning is RS50. So in that district, well, it's a corner at the corner of Hiawatha and New Orleans, or North Orleans, excuse me. So this is the site plan that was submitted for the application. And you can see the proposed structure is located only about a little over 10 feet from the front property line as an accessory structure, not including the use of the extended family residence. The structure itself has to be back 60 feet from the front property line. As you can see, the existing house is situated between the two trees and pushed towards the back of the property, which limits the ability to place this in the 60-foot, meeting the 60-foot setback. So you can see it's currently under construction. You can see the walls where it's starting to be put up. So what's highlighted in red is the basis for the denial. Again, the structure does not meet the 60-foot required setback. It's only at 10.1 feet. Because you can't get a variance or any administrative process to reduce the setbacks. Because of this code section, staff had no choice but to deny the request. If council were to overturn the denial by staff, it essentially be granting I'll use the term variance to reduce the setback from the 60 feet down to the 10 feet. Do you have any questions for staff?
Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you. Can you go back to the site plan?
Yes, ma'am.
From my understanding, the address of this house is 6801 North Orleans. So that means the house would have to front North Orleans. Does it not
No, ma'am.
front North Orleans?
No, ma'am. The address that says the zoning front by chapter 27 is the narrowest portion of the lot. That's always considered the front yard, regardless of where the front door is oriented and how it's addressed.
But then why doesn't it have a West Hiawatha address?
The address assigned to it was 6801, probably because that's how the house is oriented for its front door. But that doesn't affect the front yard based on the zoning code.
I see. So technically for the orientation of this house, it's a side yard, but because of how it was, okay, I get it. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Condon.
Eric, is there a way for the city to administratively declare one frontage, front yard versus another side of the house a front yard?
There is. The applicant can go through a design exception for a yard determination, but even if she went through that process, the front, if it was Orleans, is only 38 feet for the structure instead of the 60 feet. So regardless of which way the lot is oriented, the applicant's still gonna be in the same situation with the accessory structure.
Well, so that accessory structure though, so if Orleans was the front yard, we'd be only just talking about a side yard setback, right?
No, sir, we'd still have the setback of 38 feet from the property line along.
Oh, because
Orleans.
the lot's just not that deep. Gotcha.
Correct.
Okay, I got you. So it doesn't matter where you put it on that property, it's not gonna meet a setback. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any
Yes,
other
sir.
questions or comments? All right, does that conclude everything, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, applicant, come on up and please state your name.
My name is Danielle Maza,
Go ahead.
and I've been sworn in, yes. Okay, so I'm just here for a variance request approval for the side corner lot. I basically hired a contractor who, come to find out, was not licensed, and I relied on faulty advice, one being the location of the structure. I approved the current location since it would mirror the building construction directly across the street, which I have, I don't know, okay, which I have right here. So there's my property and the structure's there, and then this is my neighbor. So that's why I approved the location that they gave. And then as well as I have a live oak that is sitting right here, which you'll also see on the site plan, that I'm having problems with my primary house with, so I wanted to make sure the structure was far enough away from that. I have this survey that I can show you. So right there's the live oak, and there's the building. So the hardship of this project is my address applies to 2 front setbacks. The address is Orleans Avenue, but the city considers Hiawatha the front of the property. So I'm requesting the front side yard, which is on Hiawatha, setback to be reduced to 10 feet, which is 35 feet from the asphalt now, or from the pavement. And then the side corner yard to be reduced to 4 feet. All other specific standards will be met with the structure and will not interfere with the health, safety, or welfare of the community. I also brought a City of Tampa ADU eligible area map to show that it's within the limits, if that helps at all. But I believe that if the request is approved, it would at least help the, increase the property values in the neighborhood. And that's all I have.
Any questions or comments? Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this item? Nobody registered. Councilmember Clendenin?
Can I get, Eric, are you still there? The property across the street, is that permitted and approved structure, or is that, how did we get there?
Across on the other side of Orleans.
So the applicant showed us information that what would appear to be construction that would mimic what they're attempting to do on this property, so it would be in harmony with some development across the street. But is that development across the street, was it properly permitted and approved?
I can't answer that question. I don't know. I have not done the research on that.
Okay.
All right, Councilman Miranda.
In fact, I was going to ask a similar question about within the perimeter of this property, is there any other properties that have the same, that they can't build and they have something in the back already or something? I don't know. Did y'all do any checking on the surrounding properties that they don't have something that these folks are asking for?
Staff did not look into that. Staff looked strictly at the property in question and the criteria for the request that was applied for. We don't have the ability to waive the requirements based on what has been.
I understand that. I understand that.
The developer around it.
So I have a question, legal. So would this be a situation that the applicant would better be served, instead of applying, this SU, coming through a traditional variance request, so that staff would have done the research about adjacent properties and the impact they would have on neighborhoods? So how would we get that information?
Mr. Cotton can answer that question.
Okay.
I can't advise what
Gotcha.
process she should go through.
Okay.
I can't advise that, but Mr. Cotton can explain the difference between a variance, which is governed by 27-80 and the hardship criteria, versus why maybe she elected to go through an SU1 process. Or, because this is here for an extended family residence, that use.
Right.
That's why we're here. The application is for an extended family residence that has specific criteria
Right.
that she didn't meet. So that's because of the use that she's asking for. And maybe she could elaborate on it, but because of the use that she's asking for, that's why we're here. A variance is just for setback requirements.
I'm just wondering, as Councilman Miranda echoed as well, I'm just curious about how this works with the other properties, adjacent properties, the impact that has, and how do we as a council, in what format does that come to us when we can see the bigger picture?
Not in this, I understand, Councilman, your question, but not in this avenue that's before you. Would
Right.
other surrounding properties come into play? Because this is looking at her application within itself on
Okay.
whether or not it does or does not meet the criteria.
Thank you, I appreciate it, thank you.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that. I mean, this is already in a area that allows ADUs, so it really, I mean, every single house around it could have an ADU. She showed the map, and
No, I get that, I'm talking about the setbacks.
I understand, the setbacks for such a weird piece of property, I understand why they need to be here, but I just wanted to make sure I threw
No,
that
I
out
get
there.
that.
Councilman Miranda, do you have anything else?
No, I'm sorry.
All right, is there any rebuttal that you have at this time? You have 5 minutes? No? Can I get a motion to close? We have a motion to close from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Carlson. All in favor? Aye. Would anybody like to make a motion? And the motion would be to deny or uphold or overturn. Yes, ma'am.
I move to overturn the zoning administrator's denial of SU 124-76 for the property located at 6801 North Orleans Avenue because the petitioner provided substantial and competent evidence to waive the requirement and therefore allow for an extended family residence to be in a non-conforming structure or a structure made conforming as a result of a variance as set forth in City of Tampa Code Section 27-132 for the following reasons. Because this is a corner lot where both front setbacks are required, that this is really acting as a side, so this is more of a side setback.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Hurtak, second from Councilmember Carlson. Yes, sir.
Petitioner, this is for family only?
Yes, my mother.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Roll call vote.
Clendenin.
You know, I'm empathetic with the situation, but I'm also concerned about the public use of the property, you know, the neighborhood and all, and like I say, I'm empathetic with your situation, and not that my vote's gonna matter in this, but I'm gonna vote no on that, because I just feel that we don't have enough information about the overall neighborhood and what the impacts of the reduced setbacks mean to the neighborhood in general. Thank you.
Henderson.
Yes.
Vieira is absent. Miranda.
Yes.
Carlson. Hurtak.
Yes.
And Maniscalco.
Yes.
Motion carried with Clendenin voting no and Vieira being absent at vote.
Thank you very much. Next up is item 54 for a historic designation, or historic landmark designation. Hello, sir. How are you? Please state your name.
Good afternoon, council members. Dennis Fernandez, Architectural Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Very excited today to be here on item number 54, which is adding to our inventory of locally historic landmarks in the city of Tampa, and a very special one with the Dobie House, the residence of Richard and Florence Dobie. You may recall when we were here in the end of 2022 expanding the Hyde Park Local Historic District. There was a great deal of discussion about protecting the resources of Dobieville. And although we did include the Dobie House in the district boundaries at that time, we had always intended to come back to it after that initial protection was applied and seek the recognition to the structure as a local landmark. And thankfully, Ms. Tara Nealon, who is the owner, was very supportive and accommodating and researching the property with us in order to bring it to you this afternoon. Elaine Lund is here with my staff. She will present a PowerPoint to you with the basic criteria that needs to be satisfied for local landmark designation.
Let me ask you a question,
Yes,
just a
sir.
general question. This is for local historic landmark designation, which would protect a property from being demolished, correct?
Correct.
So I know that there was a building on North Franklin Street, maybe 30, 35 years ago, and it was a historic landmark building, but then it was taken off the registry and demolished. There's always, that's always a possibility for, this is just a general question, but it's not a permanent thing.
The ordinance that's applied to these properties is permanent. There's processes for demolition even with locally landmarked properties. I'm not sure which one we're talking about on the 35-year ago, but
Franklin and Harrison, where they're reconnecting the street. It was a corner building
Right.
there. It was a pawn shop.
Right.
I have a photo of it, and I was looking at it the other
Yeah.
day, and I saw that it was designated, but then it was demolished. So just my own
right.
thing, so.
Well, I can tell you, I've been here going on 24 years, and in the time I've been here, there's only been one building that has been locally landmarked that had to be demolished, and that was because of condition. So it definitely is a factor that protects buildings. Is it 100% effective? Perhaps not, but it does greatly increase the likelihood that a building will be preserved.
Can I just ask a follow-on? I won't go deep into the subject, but the Broval had a national designation, but it must not have had a local designation. I know the city had to pay a lot of money to deal with that, right?
That's correct. That particular property or any property that's listed on the National Register of Historic Preservation does not necessarily have any protective measures with it. There is some regulatory effect from federal expenditure of dollars on those particular structures that requires mitigation, and that's one of the reasons why it was reconstructed in its new site. However, local historic designation does bring the protections of the local ordinances, and that's why we really bring those to you, because these are just much more effective for us.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Lund, yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Good afternoon, Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. We have a presentation for you this afternoon.
Yep.
Okay, there we are. So as stated, this is regarding the local historic landmark designation of the Dobie House at 1405 West Azile Street. The owner of the circa 1912 Dobie House, once the home of Richard Dobie and his family, has submitted an application to the Historic Preservation Commission for the local historic landmark designation of the home. The HPC reviews properties for eligibility for local historic designation in accordance with Section 27257 of the city's code. Local designation preserves and protects our city's historic resources and the city's heritage. The Dobie House is located on Azile Street between Oregon and Orleans Avenues. On the left, you can see the property as it sat in 1915, and on the right, you can see the present-day aerial of the property. Just to the west and the north is the Crosstown Expressway and lands that are owned by the Expressway Authority. The red line on the aerial map indicates this north boundary of the local Hyde Park Historic District. And then again, here is the map of the greater Hyde Park Historic District with the local historic district boundary shown in red. The blue line that you see is for the National Register Historic District boundary. And then the location of the Dobie House is marked by the green arrow. Richard Dobie was well known in Tampa during the early part of the 20th century as a successful black entrepreneur. In addition to owning his own businesses in ice delivery and trash collection, he also bought and sold real estate with enough holdings to donate land to serve the black community in Tampa. Most notably, he donated the land for the Dobieville Elementary School and for the Zion Cemetery. He also contributed a substantial amount of funds to build the circa 1917 St. Paul AME Church, which is also a local historic landmark. The Dobie House is a vestige of the Dobieville neighborhood, which once stretched from Swan Avenue on the south to Fig Street on the north, between Albany Avenue and Willow Avenue on the east. Dobyville was a thriving community in the early 20th century, home to many of the Black Americans who worked as domestics in Hyde Park. The rate of home ownership in Dobyville was higher than in most other Black neighborhoods, and it was noted that the rent quarters were in generally good condition. In addition to housing, Dobyville was home to the Dobyville Elementary School and several churches. Several factories were found along the ACL Railroad, which ran diagonally through the neighborhood, and you can see that here in the 1957 photograph. That's the railroad corridor running diagonally through the picture. This picture is from just prior to the beginning of the expressway construction. The Doby House is located just off the bottom of this picture, so we don't see it there, but we do see the Dobyville School in this photo. It remained open until 1966, when it was demolished to facilitate the construction of the Crosstown Expressway, as were many of the neighborhood's homes and businesses. So this house is a modest wood frame structure. It has been covered in stucco. It's much like other houses that were constructed throughout the Dobyville neighborhood. While not significant for its architecture, the Doby House is significant for its association with Richard Doby, and it is considered eligible under Criterion A of the National Register criteria, and in the area there of community planning and development, and under Criterion B in the area of ethnic heritage. The application was made by the owner, Ms. Nealon, on April 23rd of 2024. And the HPC made a recommendation to, that City Council approve this application on September 17th. The Planning Commission completed its evaluation of the proposed designation in October and found that the application was consistent with the City of Tampa's comprehensive plan. Notice for this hearing has been provided to the owner, to nearby property owners, and registered organizations. Staff finds that this property meets the criteria for designation as summarized previously, found in section 27257 of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances. And therefore, we are recommending the Doby House at 1405 West Azile Street for local historic landmark designation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love when you and Mr. Fernandez present something to council, because the research that you do in presentation, I always learn something new. Like I learned a lot today. So great presentation. You know, Dobyville is such a significant part of our history, and Mr. Doby and the because there are relatives that I know some of the relatives. They're still here, and it's such a significant structure. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, do we have an applicant? Please state your name.
My name is Tara Nealon, and I am at 1405 West Azile. I am the applicant, and thank you for your curiosity and support. I do support the local historic landmark designation of the Doby home 1405 West Azile for the cultural significance to the city. I am grateful for the good work of all parties, including HHP&A and Hyde Park Spanish Town Creek, all the neighbors, supporters, community activists, members of the city who put in the effort to learn about, share their wisdom, share their knowledge, to expand the local historic district to include Hyde Park, Spanish Town Creek, and parts of Dobyville. Now, we get to designate this home specifically. As you know, Mr. Doby was noted to have been a pioneer in the Black communities in Tampa over 100 years ago. His prominence and community mindedness led the neighborhood to being called Dobyville. I've come to learn the land, as you know, that he donated for a church and a school are gone now, and the Zion Cemetery was lost for decades. 1405 West Azile remains. Local historic landmark designation helps to keep the Doby families, Richard Doby's contributions, his life story, and Dobyville's story is alive in Tampa's history, and I'm honored to play my small part.
Thank you very much. Do we have any public comment for this item? Come on up. Please state your name.
Good afternoon. I'm Patrick Chimino. I live at 604 South Oregon, and I'm the land use chairman of the Historic Hyde Park Neighborhood Association. We were very involved in the expansion of the district, and it was quite an accomplishment, and we thank all the different entities within the city, the Architectural Review Commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, City Council for achieving that. And this is a missing piece, and thankfully, Tara is willing to pursue this because it comes with limitations, but it preserves a very important part of our history, and that's really what we want in our local historic district. So I just want to thank all the entities and thank Tara for her interest in doing this. It's been a very incremental process for years, and this is a big milestone. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Nope. Is there any question or comment from council?
Yeah, can
Sir?
Marty said I can make a comment. This is my old neighborhood association. I lived 2 blocks from this house for years, and I love what's left of Dobyville, and I'm so happy that we got the historic designation extended. That was something I tried to do when I was a neighbor, and we couldn't, and finally we did it in the last couple years. But Tara, if I remember correctly, when you moved in this house, you didn't even know did you know the history of it when you moved in?
Come on up to the
sorry.
podium so we can get you on the mic. And please state your name again.
Sorry.
I'm Tara Nealon. I knew prior to purchasing 1405 West Azile, I lived just 2¼ blocks away
Okay,
in
that was what
HHPNA. So I was familiar with the area itself and it being a historically black neighborhood for the city of Tampa. It wasn't until the pandemic gave me plenty of time to dig into the history a little bit more, walk up to the sign that's really not walkable because it's in a piece of grass, but the Dobyville sign itself, which obviously the image of it is available online. So I learned a lot from moving in. And
The point I was going to make is that she moved in this house, and then she took on the personal responsibility. And as someone said, if you designate a house like this, what's happening in this neighborhood is a lot of these old houses have been torn down, and that people are building huge houses there. And you could easily have monetized this, but you took this on several years ago as a point of personal pride. And you brought in in the home tours, you brought in several tours, and you've had the Dobie family in, and I went on a tour with you with Rodney Kite Powell a few years ago, and it's just so great that we have people that want to protect important heritage like this, because one owner could have easily changed all that and gotten rid of a piece of history. So thank you for your dedication, and thank you to the neighborhood for continuing to work on this.
yeah, thank you.
All right. Can I get a motion to close? Motion to close from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Rand. All in favor? Aye. Councilmember Carlson. Would you mind reading it?
Sure. I'd like to move number 54, file number HL 25-10735, HPC 24-27. Ordinance being presented for first reading consideration. Ordinance of the City of Tampa, Florida, designating the Dobie House located at 1405 West Azile Street, Tampa, Florida, as more particularly described in Section 3 hereof as a local historic landmark, providing for appeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing for effective date.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson. We have a second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Motion carried with Viera, unanimously with Viera being absent at vote. Second reading and adoption will be held on February 20th, 2025 at 10:00 a.m. in City Council Chambers, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to go to staff reports. These are in person. We're going to start with item number 60, which is the Community Benefits Agreement, followed by a stoplight at Franklin and Water Street. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Feely, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Abby Feely, Administrator, Development and Economic Opportunity. This afternoon, I'd like to give you a verbal update or to respond to the motion concerning the Community Benefits Agreement with the related group, and then the reverters that are on separate property. Just a little history, the RFP for Rome Yard was awarded March 17th of 2021, and after that award, the first community benefits agreement in the city was developed through a series of public meetings. There were 3 of them, one on October 13th of 21, one on November 16th of 21, and one on January of 22. And then that agreement was brought to City Council and ultimately adopted by Resolution 2022-348 on May 4th of 2022. That agreement is the one that is in place now and that we are operating under. The parameters of that agreement included a West Tampa Cultural Center, Workforce Development Center, 40% WMBE participation, repainting of the MLK Center, and of course the affordable housing commitments that were identified in that agreement as well. And I'd like to, there's a total of 954 units there, 185 at 50% AMI, 94 at 80% AMI, 368 at 140% AMI, and 307 market rate. So just wanted to share that information. There was not discussion related to the Yellow Jackets through the development of that CBA. That CBA has not been amended or needed to be as the project is getting started, and they're doing environmental remediation out at the site right now prior to vertical construction. So in terms of addressing anything additional with the Yellow Jackets, that agreement would not be able to address that at this time. And then in relation to the releasing of the reverter clauses on the county building, the county's Head Start building is on a property that is owned by the city with a reverter, that it is not used for health services provisions, that it reverts back to the city. And right now, there are discussions going on in relation to that, but that is a contract type of agreement that is in negotiations, and if we reach agreement on that, those items would come back to City Council. But at this time, there has been no release of the reverter either on the Head Start property or on the MLK Center, which is a county-owned property that's used by the city with a reverter that would go back to the county if we do not use it for park purposes. So that is my update today.
Councilmember Henderson.
I didn't even cut on my light yet.
Yeah, it's your motion.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Feely, for your report. Have we ever amended a community benefit agreement?
So we only have one. This is it.
This is the first one?
This was the first one, and it's the only one we have right now. You have another one forthcoming to you related to Gasworks, but it is in the public meeting stage right now. In fact, I believe they had a meeting last night. So this is the only one that we currently have.
Was there a meaningful conversation or any communication with the related group regarding the Yellow Jackets? Or was this an internal decision based on us saying that it's not amendable at this time? Like, did you present it to them at all, the Yellow Jackets?
In the community benefits agreement, and the Rome Yard community benefits agreement actually doesn't predate me, but I was not involved in that process. But our community benefits ordinance spells out how those agreements have to be developed with those public meetings. The developer holds those public meetings with the community, and then they bring back what the summaries of those were. I believe they're attached to the community benefits agreement in Exhibit B of that agreement. So I cannot speak to that at this time, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about since the motion was made. You know, the motion was made by me in this chamber about the possibility of the related group addressing their community benefit agreement and making a modification to include the Yellow Jackets. Are they aware of the amount of acreage that they received, you know, in terms of the Rome Yard development that was the Yellow Jackets? Do they know the historical aspect? I mean, I'm just trying to get some understanding and context as to how did we get here where we could paint the building across the street as a part of the community benefit agreement, which is our, you know, park and recreation facility. That can be a part of the community benefit agreement, but the actual land where the Yellow Jackets once were housed, couldn't be a part of an initial discussion?
So it's my understanding that the land related to that and whatever took place was prior to the RFP. The RFP then went out. It did not specify anything in that relationship to providing any additional amenities or anything related to that. The responses that came in and related was not the only one. They were evaluated on the context of the RFP in terms of the award being granted, and then once the award was granted, the developer that received that award, in this case related, then performed the development of the CBA in context with the CBA ordinance. So it wouldn't be, I don't believe, and I can let the legal department speak to that. Rebecca's here with me today, Ms. Johns. I don't believe at this point we would have standing to go back to them to open up what was fulfilled as in compliance with our ordinance in terms of having a further discussion.
Thank you. I'll talk to Ms. Rebecca. Will you come to the podium, please? This is, I guess from a legal standpoint, I know that the related group is not obligated to change a community benefit agreement, but since this is our first one, could there be an opportunity to amend a community benefit agreement if there were serious discussions regarding it?
Rebecca Johns, Legal Department. If both parties agree to amend an agreement, then an amendment would come back before you.
And who are the
for
parties?
approval. RUDG and the City of Tampa.
Okay. Where are the other part?
Correct. But we have no ability to force them to amend this agreement. They would have to agree to do it.
Right, okay. So the conversation would have to take place first.
Correct. There would have to be negotiations.
Okay, so if we're agreeable and they're agreeable to open up a conversation, how do we go about doing that?
Then we would bring an amendment to the CBA before you, just like we do any agreement that we bring before you for your approval.
Okay, so, but that means that you would have to ask them if they're amendable to having the so it's 50-50. If we say yes,
they have to agree to it.
And then they would have to agree, and then we could find out if they agree or not.
Correct. It would be just like any other negotiations for an agreement. We would negotiate them, come to an agreement, and then we would document it, bring that document to you for approval.
Okay, so that means that there's two parties involved. The originators, us, because it's our land that we gave to them. We gave it away, or did they buy it? The Yellow Jackets.
We own it.
Yeah, we owned it, but did we give it to Related Group as a part of the Long Yard development?
Part of it we are leasing to them, and part of it we will be deeding to them. The townhome portion will be deeded to them.
Deeded to them.
But the remainder of it is leased to them.
I don't know if this is a legal question or a difficult question. So who benefits the most from this community benefit agreement in terms of giving away the Yellow Jackets field and them building townhomes on what we just finished listening to a historical, I guess we'll get a historical marker. That's what the Yellow Jackets would get at this point, where we would acknowledge that they were once there. That's what's done in situations where, once African American people lived and worked and played is now just historical markers. So I'm just trying to figure out if there is an opportunity, a serious opportunity here, and it requires actually a conversation with Related Group that appears to have not happened up here.
It requires a conversation with
Who
Related,
does that? Who has
and
to
it
do it?
requires Related to be willing to.
Well, that's great because Related really wants to do a lot of business in the city of Tampa. So them opening themselves up to a conversation is not a threat. It's just an opportunity, and we can find out, their position on this. And not be forced. I don't want to twist their arms. I don't want to do that. It is a community benefit agreement. If they're willing to paint her Martin Luther King facility across the street that has nothing to do with the Wrong Yard project as a part of the community benefit agreement, certainly the land where they are building townhomes that was once the baseball field to the Yellow Jackets, land that we owned, that's an opportunity to look at the community benefit agreement. At least that is my opinion, and I'm stating so publicly because I represent the 65,000 constituents in the district where the Yellow Jackets were housed for many years, land that was given to them after a young boy was killed. And they gave it to, the city gave them that land and said, well, we're not gonna build you the baseball field, we'll give you the land, but you all have to build a baseball field yourselves. And they did that. And so there was some sort of, between mayors, the Yellow Jackets ended up on the short end of the stick by being placed outside of the West Tampa community in Tampa Heights next to a graveyard. And so I'm just trying to, as a council member, make the community happy with a better decision now that there's a different council. So if there's a recommendation, just by listening to you and Ms. Feely, is that it could start with finding out if council's interested in coming to the table, or is that the mayor? Who would have to do it first, us or the mayor?
Well, the mayor is responsible for negotiating, the mayor and the administration is responsible for negotiating these agreements. So you could make a request that the administration look at doing this, and if it's beneficial, then to start those discussions.
Because I would rather for us to paint our our Martin Luther King Center, I'd rather for us to do that and to make the Yellow Jackets a little bit better than what it was. And then also maybe even a part of this is finding out, because think about it from this perspective, what the Yellow Jackets gave up, you know, and all of the things that, you know, one particular very involved citizen was saying, you know, he was promised, and now that administration is gone. You know, they are in they have a trailer over at a baseball field, but they built, they had infrastructure and 2 baseball fields. I mean, it's a lot of acreage. I don't know how many acres is 2 baseball fields and what have you, but for this long span period of time, not only did it sit vacant and empty, and it's still that way, you know, whereas the Yellow Jackets could have still been there and made whole and then moved to a better facility. So there's just a lot of stuff on our end that I'm trying to rectify publicly. And so that's what I would like, maybe it to begin with a conversation with the mayor to see if she's interested in going to the table with Related Group and finding out if they're interested in having this conversation. Because it doesn't sound like that actually, you know, happened, where they actually, and I, you know, me just listening now, is that it can't happen unless our side probably starts first. Because, you know, I don't see a big developer volunteering, you know, to do something. So it has to start on our end. So maybe my motion was not the right motion from the very beginning when I said to talk to Related Group. I need to start internally. Is that what you're saying based on?
That is probably a good plan, to speak with the administration and get a plan on our side before we approach Related.
Okay, well, before I make any motions, if there is comments from the dais, that would be really nice. You know, I've learned that you got to get to 4, so
Okay, well,
just want to hear what you all have to say.
then I will add, before I go to Councilmember Carlson, Miranda Clendenin, I'm happy to support you in a motion asking that the administration start that conversation, because it's, you had mentioned deeded and leased. Is the parcel that is the baseball field, the former Yellow Jackets, is that city-owned, that's leased, or did we deed it to them?
You're really going to test my memory without having the agreement in front of me. Is that part of the lease?
I have the agreement.
That is part of what will be leased to them.
So it's leased to them, so we own it.
Correct.
So we have, you know, I mean, we have control of the property even though there's an agreement. You know, the conversation here is, and I've heard about the Yellow Jackets field from all over the community. You know, people that just care about historic preservation in general. And like Councilmember Henderson said, you know, so much gets demolished and we get a historic marker of what used to be. That parcel is there. I know the Yellow Jackets are, you know, it's in another part of town, but historically, I mean, that is the important parcel. I think a lot can be done through communication and talking. The worst they can say is no, but it's the right thing to do. And I think if Councilmember Henderson were to make a motion supported by council members saying, we're asking the administration, the mayor, to reach out and have that discussion, perhaps Related would be open to it and we can figure something out. I mean, the Rome Yard project is massive. This is a small piece, but it's a very important piece of the community. Again, I've heard this from, I can't even tell you how many people, hey, the Yellow Jackets, the Yellow Jackets. The historical significance. We've lost so much of Tampa's history to the interstate, through urban renewal, on and on and on. I think if council's willing, and because I want to support, if she makes a motion, I'm going to support this, that we ask the mayor, the administration to reach out and have that discussion. Perhaps, Related would be willing to talk about it and see where we can go from there. So I'm in support. Councilmember Carlson, Miranda, Clendenin.
Yeah, one thing, I agree, I'm in support as well. One thing we can do is continue this document until something happens. You all remember that this project started under the last administration, and then it suddenly got delayed for kind of, the committee was suspicious about why it got delayed, and then it was punted to this administration. This administration held an RFP, and we were not involved in the RFP. We were not consulted on it. Then they chose Related. They negotiated for a year before they told us anything about it, and then they brought it to us for approval. I don't remember discussions about the Yellow Jackets at all during that time. Had somebody brought it up, we would have all defended it. But what happened is all that conversation went on. The ironic thing now is that the former mayor who punted this is now a lobbyist for the Related group. And also, I've said this before, but I think the mayor has a conflict of interest because the mayor's partner's firm is a lobbying firm for the Related group also. And that was confirmed to me. Both of those were confirmed to me by Related representatives. Apparently, the mayor's partner does not work on it specifically, but the mayor's partner's firm works on it. And I think that that someone should be designated on staff to negotiate this. The Related group is very philanthropic. We see they've given to Tampa Museum of Art. They've given to Botero, that's on Bayshore. They give all. He has two museums down in Miami. I mean, they're incredibly philanthropic, and I think they're nice people, and they would be willing to do something. And so I think we ought to have a conversation. Even though you can't negotiate directly, I think you should offer to meet with them, especially since I know the legal department may disagree with me. But based on the ethics rules of the city and the state, I think that the mayor personally has a conflict and somebody else should negotiate it. I think that at the very least, we should approve a letter that would be sent by you or the chair to the representative Related to ask them if they would consider this. And I think they're reasonable people and they would. Separately, I want to talk about the request of Commissioner Myers, but I want to tell you I support you in this in whatever you decide to do.
Can I just had a thought,
Yes.
Ms. John. Okay, so just outside of Related group, because I met Mr. Milo for lunch some months back, and I purposely did not have this conversation because I didn't know if I had the legal authority to do so. Even a conversation with the mayor where she's open to putting it in her budget to make the Yellow Jackets whole on behalf of the city of Tampa and Park and Recreation, where there is money, funds set aside. It doesn't have to be Related group. From some perspective, community goodwill, I think it should be, but that's a personal opinion, not a mandate. And I want to make that clear because I know these developers do watch council meetings. I'm just open to us making an effort, a sincere effort, to not just keep kicking the can on the Yellow Jackets, whereas we could at least have an opportunity to bring Parks and Rec in and say, hey, what can we do? And to improve the situation over there. The one thing, and this probably, I'm going to go ahead and say it now because I know that the reporter may just take the blurb of what I said about this entire area. and go ahead on and say this now on record, that when the North Boulevard Homes was demolished, we did it all at one time. And a wonderful person in my community who is a licensed clinical social worker said that that was genocide to the Black community because we could have done it in phases. And what's ironic about that is in Miami, a major development, housing development that the related group actually is still constructing, they did it in phases. And so that is one of the I think the faults of the past administration in dealing with this, because I did ask the previous mayor, you know, why did you move the Yellow Jackets? And he said, because there were no kids there. And so my immediate thought was, yes, because you tore down the entire community. You tore it down all at once. You demolished it. And so now we're here as a new body to try to, you know, rectify this and not, you know, look so much at politics, but at, you know, doing what's best for the city of Tampa, especially because hands down, a historical marker would be the easiest thing for us to do. That's going to happen because the Yellow Jackets is real, and they were there for a very long time. It originated there. So that's the easy part of us moving a motion for that. A little bit of effort to, because they moved outside of the community, is something that we need to rectify. And I want the administration as well as city council to be a part of that, and not make it so. What I need from the staff is for you all to come up with the yes, instead of me months and months of this coming back and just me still, you know, trying to address it. You all know how we can get here, and we can get here faster if the staff and city council are on board. And so that's what I want. That's what I want, and I'll leave it at that.
Councilmember Moran and then Clendenin.
No,
Darlene Bremen fan.
You know, I've said it earlier many times, and I think what they did, they promised them something at Plymouth Park, I think it was. And that's a long way for them to travel. And we said that, I think, during the meeting way back. But I don't know what happened after that. I know that they played or practiced at Plymouth Park. I don't know if they were successful or not. I don't know if they broke up or not. I don't know if they still have a baseball, because there was no one there. So I don't know then what happened to the Yellow Jackets. I really don't. So I think that's the first thing we got to carry the cross for. And the second thing is about the park, and maybe Mr. Malky, who's the head of the Parks and Recreation, can enlighten us as to what size is the park, what's coming up, and any plans for it or whatever. And I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm sorry in the audience.
That's what I'm here for. Good afternoon, Tony Malky, Parks and Recreation Director. Councilman and rest of the council, thank you. So the move was made in 2019 to Calvin Taylor Park, as everybody knows. That park has two smaller size fields. The one that Plymouth that you're talking about is Doc Nance, and that has the larger field. But from what I've researched on this and found, that there was a lot of negotiation on which site that they wanted out of the two that was offered, and it was settled on the Calvin Taylor Park at the end of the day, because they had two fields and some infrastructure that the other one did not have at that point. At the time that they were transferred, the administration allocated $250,000 for improvements to the space. The fields were redone with regrading, the dugouts were rebuilt, and since then internally we have focused some resources towards there, and we continue to do so, and really would like to look at the big picture of what we can do. Like you said, you know, we'd like a roadmap. We would like to kind of take a look at that, and leaving here, I'll have our athletics team really take a look at that site and see what wholesale improvements can be done as we prepare our budgets. But that is one of those things that we've recently engaged with the Rays that installed new screens around the property. We understand the dynamic with that portable trailer. We're bringing in higher end portable restrooms instead of portalettes, so that they have a place to go to.
And the reason is that I remember going over the North Boulevard Bridge, or whatever you want to call it, to the right, was heading south was the park, the Yellow Jackets Park, and there was it looked to me like it was like a major small kids park with one big field, And I don't know if they had a couple of smaller fields. But I remember the big, it looked like a softball field, which was the size of a 12-year-old baseball player, boys and girls area to play. So I don't know about the other dynamics, if there was anything bigger than that. I'm sure it might have been, but I don't remember it. I just remember seeing one park there, one really neat little thing.
They
Middle
had
of the neighborhood.
2 fields on that site. One was a larger field that's comparable to that Plymouth site. And then
I
the
didn't
softball
realize
sites.
all that. But, and then I'll talk to you later about Henry and Ola when you have a chance. Not now, it's not on the agenda for today. Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I support that too. Councilmember Clendenin.
Yeah, some of what Councilman Miranda just spoke about was what I wanted to talk about. One, some of this makes me uncomfortable that, one, this was an agreement that the question was asked and answered. I mean, not in this administration, but even the previous administration. So it's like, it puts us in a really difficult position because it was not even this mayor, it was a previous mayor that negotiated this with a private entity and referenced the possession of the property. A lease is a lease, just like a transferring control. I mean, that is transferring control of the property. If you have a binding lease, when you had a meeting of the minds of 2 parties and you signed an agreement, that's a binding agreement. So we're left with that reality. I don't even know how comfortable I am, and then I'm going to contradict myself when I finish this. I think that we have an internal city thing where we have, just like in many parks in the city, but specifically because of the sensitivity of this particular property, because of the Yellow Jacket League and what it meant to so many people in the community, we have an obligation to bring this up to standards. That's a city responsibility. It has nothing to do with this private entity. It's something we need to do. We're probably just about ready to start in the next fiscal year budget cycle. We need to make sure that budget cycle has enough money in there to put permanent restrooms, to put the facilities in there that the community demands, the community wants. Make sure that stuff is there, and that's a city responsibility. Now I'm going to contradict myself, because I also have a question, and I don't mean to be revisiting the question that has been asked and answered, but I keep wondering, is it too late? Because now we have County Commissioner Gwen Myers has been a strong advocate for this center, which is across the way, which is a substantial investment on history, and it's going to be an amazing project, hopefully, fingers crossed. And it seems as though what we're trying to do and what we did with the benefit agreement is kind of like pointless at this point because of what Commissioner Myers is doing. And is there better use of that resources? And are we just, because we bought a car that, we bought a 1970s Plymouth and now there's going to be a Rolls Royce? I mean, are we wasting money, taxpayer money, and is there better use of that money for the community? And is that a broader conversation that we should be having about this project? The world changed from the time this benefit agreements was negotiated. We're in a different world. We probably need to have that conversation. Otherwise, we look like the government people hate. Like, why can't we pivot? Why can't we at least have that conversation? And I think that is the conversation. And obviously, legal staff said this is something that it's not this council, it's the administration. But I'm just saying that for the public that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I do just, again, Rebecca Johns, Legal Department, I do just want to point out that because this is a community benefit agreement and this came about due to discussions with the community, and now there is a community benefit ordinance that requires public meetings.
Right.
Any amendment to this agreement, I think, really does need to involve discussions with the community also, because you're amending a community benefit.
Oh, I concur 100%. But I mean, that's kind of apples before I think what we have to do is somebody has to have the discussion, and obviously the administration is listening to this. So I think it's probably wise to have that broader conversation. I mean, again, and I'm uncomfortable with it too, because I get the fact that we have agreements, and when do you keep revisiting things? And every time that you think, I mean, I get that, I totally get that, but this because of what the commission's doing and this project across the way, I think the scale of it just tipped it over a little bit to say maybe we could revisit this. And again, separate and apart from that, we have a lot of improvements that need to be made in the city, and I think that park is one of them, and we need to have that discussion and give it the resources that it deserves. I'm done.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you. In my opinion, this is what amendments are made for. That's what an amendment is. I mean, when things change, you amend. And I agree wholeheartedly with everyone else that that we have to at least have the conversation about amending it. Because yes, do we want two competing community centers across, I mean, what's the value in that? And in theory, at the community benefit agreement, when everyone came to an agreement, that was a great idea. But now the county's gonna do a bigger, more, based on the designs I've seen, more comprehensive. So why are we, replicating? So can we turn and take that money and use it for the Yellow Jackets instead? My only thing is, and if we have to end up doing it ourselves, I'm fine with that. I just don't want it to come out of the park and rec budget as a whole, because it's already low. I want us to find the money within the budget somewhere else. That's the only thing I would want, but again, I don't think we should start there. I think it should be the last thing. I think we should just say that we're going to make them whole, whatever it takes. But the first thing I would love to do is see if we could take that money that was going to go toward a cultural center that is now the county's going to do, and help. And as you said, the mural, we could do that ourselves and do whatever it takes to see if we can move that money to make them whole. I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. You're on the right track. I 100% support you, and it sounds like the entire council supports you. So however we need to go forward, I will back you in that.
Well, the other part of this is that, Commissioner Myers, yes, we didn't talk yesterday. She did call me because this is two different entities, the commission and, if they're on board with the cultural center, there is a reverter clause in place. And I don't know if the city is necessarily, I don't know if staff is, willing, the mayor's office is willing to give that up because we're building a cultural center that could also be a part of what Commissioner Myers is trying to do. I know that at one point it was offered to her and she declined. So that's why this is so complicated. And also, let me just say this. What can happen at the Yellow Jackets field is really, in terms of, in my head, a much smaller budget than building a 20,000 square foot cultural center. It's just totally different. The simplicity of making the Yellow Jacket whole, in my mind, doesn't really take a lot of money. And you're right, the Parks and Rec's budget is tight. So it would require, for the, the budget to increase in order to do that if it was our responsibility. See, that's what makes this tricky, because I don't know if I necessarily want to support, releasing the reverter clause. What are we getting if we give that up? That's not fair. It's supposed to be used for health services. And, for us to give that up, what are we getting from the county? I don't know. That is... So today is, what I would do, I would end with this. You know how I need a moment of reflection before I even make a motion, so I don't want to rush and even make a motion today. I really appreciate the conversation. I will come back at a different time because it was just a report presented. We're not required to do anything with it in terms of, but we can only talk up here. So I'll give it some more thought because of the nature of even the cultural center that Gwen Myers is proposing. Really, it doesn't have anything to do with us. I don't know if she's raised all the funding. At one point, I heard it was going to cost about $50 million. Construction costs probably, sure has changed quite a bit since she probably even initiated the idea. And so that could be so much longer down the road, and we're still trying to, we're still talking about the Yellow Jackets and this, and so I just need to think about it. I really appreciate the conversation because the cultural center that the community decided upon with Rome Yard, I don't want to step on those toes either. You know what I'm saying? Because there are people on that side that want it to be exactly how they indicated it with all of that conversation. So I'll just end it with that. And I appreciate the conversation.
I'd like to see the cultural center built, and I'd like to see the Yellow Jackets field restored to the original location.
Yeah.
That's my goal, so whatever you decide.
And I rather, I know I'm a little bit different. I would go ahead on and have this conversation with the mayor, and see, you know, what her position is, rather than make a motion and have to wait for staff to come back. It's just easier, you know, to hash it out, and, because I can talk to her without breaking sunshine.
Whatever you want to
So
do.
I'll start there.
I want to be supportive, you know, but, you know, you have the conversation and then reflect upon it, and when you're ready to make a motion. Councilmember Clendenin?
Yeah, I just want, because of people listening, I just want people, the property on the Rome Yard property, I mean, again, that question's been asked and answered as far as development. Where as far as making whole and because that property swap was done a long time ago we need to make sure that the facilities they are currently utilizing are up to standards and they have everything they want in that facility. I think that's a realistic goal of this council and the administration. I mean, revisiting, like, taking back property that's been leased away or sold away is not really.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
that was never.
Yeah, I was listening, I heard something, I go, oh, no, we can't do that. It's just, so just make sure we need to, and everything you said.
Yeah. No, I found out a long time ago that we cannot, that's extortion to get the property back.
So, but I think it's appropriate that we request that the administration, you know, address the two issues that we've just discussed. One is what's contained in that community benefit agreement. Is it pertinent to 2026 and beyond? I mean, or has time moved past that? Is it worth revisiting that stuff? And also, how we can maybe possibly reopen that community benefit agreement so that, I don't think Related wants to throw money away either. You know, I don't think because they're obligated to spend money. I don't think they're not going to want to spend money that's not going to be appreciated. That's not going to be appreciated.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing this because they want to do things for the community, and you know, obviously. So I mean, I would have to think that they would want to spend their money wisely.
All right, anybody else? No? Yes, sir?
Yeah, I want to follow up on Commissioner Myers' request. I know Councilmember Henderson kind of addressed it, and Ms. Feely kind of addressed it, but this is what I've talked to Commissioner Myers and her aide, and what they're requesting is a mutual release of the reverter clauses for the county's property on 2103 North Rome Avenue, where the future African American Arts and Cultural Center will be built. So they say that they've been going back and forth with the city with some language, but Ms. Feely or somebody, could you just tell us one more time, is that, are you saying that this will be an amendment, once that is signed, that will be an amendment, and this is specifically the thing that you're working on, or is this different than what you talked about earlier?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
The paragraph that I just read that they sent me about the reverter clause in regard to 2103 North Rome Avenue, Commissioner Myers' aide said that there's negotiation going on between the county and the city. I think specifically in regard to this language, was that what you were referring to at the beginning of this conversation, that is being negotiated and will be an amendment, or is this different than that?
It would not be an amendment to the CBA in any way. The reverters are a separate issue. It is being negotiated.
And so there's nothing in the CBA that would prohibit the reverters from,
No, they're
okay.
completely unrelated.
Okay.
Now, that being said, if an agreement is reached or something happens where it appears that the other cultural center is moving forward, clearly we would not have two cultural centers, and then we would look back at the CBA in order to reappropriate or to have that discussion. But I don't know that we're at that point yet in where all of this is in order to take it out of the CBA. And I don't know that we have those assurances yet. So those negotiations, Mr. Massey did send over some language for the county to consider. I believe they're reviewing that right now. And then if we were to come to agreement on that, I believe that those reverters or the release of those reverters would come before council.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one last thing, further to what Councilmember Clendenin said, Related is a private company. One of their areas of investment is affordable housing, and they're a for-profit organization, but they're very philanthropic. But a deal's a deal. The city cut a deal with them several years ago, and now what we are asking for them to do is to work with us or negotiate with us, but we don't have the right to go in and just change a deal that was signed several years ago. So that's all.
Councilwoman Henderson.
Yeah, just one last question. Do we have our own plans for the land that Gwen Myers is interested in for a cultural center? Do we have plans for it as well that's possibly in place?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, right now, it is the Head Start Center,
Right.
and that's when we leased it or conveyed it to the county for that use. That is where we said, I think the
what
intent
it has
was
to be.
given in the conveyance that that land is to be used for that use, and if it is no longer used for that use, then the city would like it back.
So isn't it a possibility that we still need that because of all the housing development that's there, that we would still need that facility? Or Head Start? I mean, the county would still need those services in that location? Anyway, you can't answer that. That's their question. That's for them, Ms. Feely. Thank you.
Very good. Is there anything else?
Nope, not for me.
Thank you, staff. That was rough.
It was not. It was not.
It was interesting,
Well,
yeah.
no, 300 people here until 3 in the morning is rough.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Very good. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 61. Did we? No, this was the, no.
Good afternoon, Council. Brandon Campbell, Mobility Department. I did upload a brief presentation for item 61 into OnBase, if that could be brought up.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. So the question that you all had asked us to address was what was the justification for installing traffic signals at the intersection of Franklin and Water, as well as Franklin Street and the Dick Greco Plaza pedestrian crossing. So a little background, I know some of this was addressed even in public comment this morning, but in January of 2020, Vic and I and some other staff members met with Harbor Island stakeholders at the Tampa Convention Center to talk to them about what their concerns were on the Franklin Street and Harbor Island Boulevard corridor, specifically between Burrell-Reen and Knights Run. There were several things that came out of that. The overarching theme was conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles, and more particularly during special events. So we engaged with a consultant. It was Stantec. If you're not familiar with Stantec, they have 450 offices across 6 continents, and one of them happens to be on Harbor Island, directly on Harbor Island Boulevard. So we thought they were a great fit, considering that they have the combination of the daily user experience with the expertise in traffic engineering to take a look more closely at the problems or the concerns, I suppose I should say, that the residents brought up, and make some recommendations for mitigating some of those concerns. They made several of them. Among them, one has already been implemented that is noteworthy and easy to see the progress on. That is the right turn lane off of Channel Side onto South Franklin. It previously was a shared through and right. We converted it to a right turn only lane and gave it a separate signal head and a dedicated right turn phase to help reduce the number of conflicts between those right turning vehicles and the pedestrians across the south side crosswalk. They also recommended installing the 2 signals in question today. I uploaded also into OnBase the complete study. It's fairly lengthy, so I don't want to get into too many details on that. But they looked at the signal warrants that are outlined in the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It's a mouthful. It is a federal document that sets forth a lot of rules and expectations regarding all types of traffic control devices and specifically signals as well. There are 9 warrants within the MUTCD's warrant analysis guidance, and they are meant to address different types of conflict. So some of those are vehicle-on-vehicle conflicts, some of those are crash experience, some of those have to do with school traffic. The one that really applied most closely here was Warrant 4, which is the pedestrian warrant. There are a couple of different measures, and the study took counts at different times to compare the conflicts between the vehicles using those intersections and the pedestrians using them as well. And within that study, there were, so there's, the warrant itself uses a graph and has a minimum threshold for pedestrians. But that minimum threshold it changes depending on how much vehicle traffic is there. So just to simplify it, if there's a whole bunch of pedestrians but no vehicles to conflict with them, that threshold is going to be much higher because there's just not that much conflict. There's a little text on here. I don't know if you can read it, but the study itself talked about how traffic should flow more efficiently by organizing and separating the pedestrian movements from the vehicles. And in short, it brings more order to the expectations of all users. So both pedestrians, currently as it stands, there's nothing telling any pedestrians to wait for a vehicle to go through. As Florida state law outlines, and as should be the case, vehicles are required to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk, and there's really no order to it in the way that pedestrians may be bunched together and cross in a group. We intend, as we signalize these two locations, to time those signals and to set up detections so that they remain in green for Franklin Street when there is no conflicting demand. And that's a little different from the constantly cycling signals throughout most of downtown. However, there is a good analog to that. If you go down Jackson Street in front of the Hillsborough County School, the district building, there is a signal there that remains in green for eastbound traffic unless someone comes up and pushes that button or if someone pulls up on the side street. So it is something that we do on occasion as the circumstances allow for and dictate. I did want to also share a graphic that we brought to the community. There has been some feedback, some concern about the spacing of those signals, and I think it's helpful to zoom out and take a little higher level look to see that the spacing of the signals that would be installed at Water Street and at the crosswalk itself, it's in the range of 250 feet, which is the block spacing throughout downtown. And while they are on the edge of the urbanized, signalized corridors, it does fit in the context of what we have all throughout downtown. I did not put in the presentation, but I wanted to address a couple of things that were brought up in public comment this morning, just so that we all sort of are on the same page with that. There was one thing that was mentioned about the potential for a mini roundabout there. I have some concerns about space requirements of a mini roundabout. It's only about 55 feet from corner to corner diagonally across that intersection. And so additional space would have to come from the adjacent sidewalks most likely, and I don't know that we have the right of way there. But even more fundamentally than that, it solves the wrong problem. Right now, what is happening is that, again, there's nothing telling pedestrians, hey, let's wait, let's let cars go through, and then you can go as a group. At a roundabout, the crosswalks themselves are treated exactly as they are now, which is to say that when a pedestrian wants to cross, they're allowed to do so. The other thing that was brought up this morning that I wanted to address was the timing of the traffic counts that were taken for the Stantec study. I mentioned we initiated the study in early 2020, just before the pandemic hit. You may notice that in that slide about the Stantec study, it was completed in 2022. There was an interval there where they held off on taking those counts because of the lack of events in downtown. They specifically looked at two separate events. One was a preseason Lightning game at the arena, and the other was a convention center event. If I remember correctly, I believe the estimated attendance was about 6,000. And so they're pretty good measures of what we expect to see on any given night with an event at either of those facilities. We believe that the time frame that those counts were taken is only a conservative measure of what's going on down there. Since then, the number of events and the number of pedestrians has only increased, thereby increasing the number of conflicts. So with that, I would open it up to any questions you might have.
Councilmember Carlson.
Yeah, thank you for going through this. The bottom line with this is that the Harbor Island community doesn't want either additional light. A year or two ago, they said, okay, since you all aren't budging, we'll accept the Marriott, the light at the Marriott at the base of the bridge, but we absolutely won't accept the one at Greco Plaza. And the city kept moving forward. And the city, frankly, played really dirty politics on it. And it's the same kind of dirty politics we saw on the South Howard project. That one, somebody's making $65 million, so you can understand why they would push that. But this is just a red light. And I asked the Lightning more than once, did you all ask for this? And they said, no. Yeah, Thunder Alley is through there, but they didn't ask for it. They don't need it. And so why would somebody push so hard for this? I don't understand. Is it just that the administration wants to be proven right, or is it that some engineer wants to be proven right? A corollary is that there are a lot of erratic decisions being made in the mobility department now, and stormwater to some extent. But in mobility, on east of Wilson Middle School on Swan about a year ago, the city went in and suddenly put bike lanes in place of cars. And so the residents all called me and said, why did they do this? They didn't tell us anything about it. And the city pushed back and said, no, we're just going to keep this. And I called Vic and said, this is crazy. You can't do something like that without letting people know. And so Vic said, okay, I'll look at it. The next day I started getting emails from Walk Bike Tampa. And so I called them and I said, what happened? How did you guys even know about this? And you know, this didn't exist until a few days ago. And they said a member of the mobility department called them, took them on a walking tour, and explained to them how this is a dumb idea and I was a bad guy because I wanted to get rid of bike lanes, which is absolutely not true. I'm in favor of bike lanes. But there's this erratic, dirty politics being played. In this case, also, the neighborhood association has been representing the neighbors. The mayor's office has had 2 or 3 public meetings where they didn't even invite the neighborhood leaders. And I don't understand. We know in hindsight, and probably there'll be lawsuits about the South Howard project, it's absolutely insane and irresponsible that we pass something like this. But the fight over a traffic light, when we need potholes filled all over the city, do we need more traffic lights on Bayshore? We need traffic lights in other neighborhoods. I don't understand. I'm not asking a question. I'm just making a statement. I do not understand why this is it somebody in the administration or somebody in the staff? We've seen erratic behavior from some of the staff, but we also see this. The community absolutely doesn't want it. The other thing we know because I go through there myself, and it backs up all the way to Howard Avenue, by the way, is we have a pedestrian problem. What happens is when you're turning right underneath the convention center, there's pedestrians crossing there. And I've asked many times to ban having the police haphazardly shut things down because the traffic lights can handle everything. What we need to do is stop the pedestrian traffic on the north side of that street and have it all to the south side because people can't turn right. It's blocking. It's causing gridlock in South Tampa because of that one turn. And the second turn is up at the next street near Pamela Garage. We need to protect pedestrians. We need to get pedestrians the right of way. But the way it's being handled, again, is haphazard. The whole downtown traffic system is messed up. I've talked to all the major players. They're all upset about it, and we seem not to be able to fix this. But I don't understand why this, and it's not a question, why this administration is playing such dirty politics over a traffic light. It doesn't make sense. Just give it up, and let's move the money to potholes and give Harbor Island what they want.
Oh my goodness, I want to hit on a bunch of those things. Some of them in concurrence, some of them maybe not. Yeah, that intersection at coming in off of the bridge, coming into downtown, making the right on Franklin is a mess. I find it terrible policing, and their traffic control there is just terrible. It's just terrible. I experience that all the time. In fact, I've actually made commentary to some of the police officers. You guys got to do a better job of policing that intersection. Badly, they need to do a better job. This is one of those things that we're having to suffer the consequences of councils and administrations of a bygone era. They have completely overdeveloped without the infrastructure, and that's why every time we push back all the time, sometimes people come with what looks like a good project, but the infrastructure doesn't support it. And then now here we are as a living example of a lot of development. We've got some, things that are happening on Harbor Island, much to some folks' displeasure, and, it's going to contribute more to this problem, infrastructure issues. Something tells me that none of this is the solution. I mean, nothing that we're talking about. This is all lipstick on the pig or Band-Aid, whatever euphemism you'd like to use. Nothing that we're talking about is going to solve any problem. It's going to create just as many problems as we attempt to solve. I mean, obviously, the solution would be for the Tampa Convention Center to expand over the road and have egress on the east side of Franklin so that we don't have all this pedestrian traffic going back and forth. That's the solution. This is not the solution, but, liability, I don't know. I'll talk, I've never said anything about it because I have a vested interest in it because I live in front of those bike lanes you just talked about on Swan. But now that you opened it up, I will tell you that in the exchange for just a couple of parking spots, ride bike, whatever the organizations, they're right. I mean, when the public pressure from a handful of people ended up made the mobility department go back there and restripe that property, we now have a much more unsafe situation on Swan with bikers and walkers and car traffic. We've compressed lanes. People can't back out from their driveways because the traffic is right there up against you, and literally just in exchange for a couple of parking spots. When mobility first went in there and restriped that, I understand the Art Center. I live right there. I see it every day. I get it. I get the impact that it has. But for the greater good, for the greatest amount of people, for the city of Tampa, we should have left alone and let those bike lanes be where they were and be protected and be safe, because it is a highly used corridor for walkers and bikers. Highly used corridor. And also cars, by the way. Not so much parking. There are literally a handful of parking spots. So anyway, I digress. We've got to do better. So I'm trying to understand, so the traffic roundabout, because I just spent weekend before last in Sarasota with a plethora of roundabouts. What does it solve, and what problems would it create, a small roundabout at the intersection by the Marriott?
So a roundabout, as it was presented this morning, I know that a mini roundabout was discussed. If I remember correctly, I believe that the engineer who brought it up said 80 feet in diameter. And so I'm not certain that it even fits, so just for clarity there.
Well, let's just say we could get the property.
So if
hypothetically, if property wasn't the problem.
So a roundabout would reduce the conflicts between turning vehicles specifically. But because there's no additional traffic control for the crosswalks at a roundabout, as opposed to what's out there now, the targeted issue, which is conflicts between pedestrians and cars, is not really mitigated by a roundabout. Roundabouts slow traffic. I don't know that there's truly a speed problem there, but they're good at slowing traffic and at separating conflicts between cars.
Just between cars. So if we were looking at this from a purely how we're going to design the best system to resolve conflict between vehicles and vehicles and pedestrians, and you're going to design with the layout we have now with the hotels, the arena, the convention center, the Riverwalk, and egress and ingress to Harbor Island, how would you fix this if you weren't using a traffic light? Okay, that sounds like a Vic Vita question.
May I address that?
Sure.
I think you hit upon a really good point. And there is an asymmetry between the kind of land use and the intensity that we have in downtown and the kind of transportation system we're linked to because of circumstances. So ideally, the kind of land use that we have in our downtown today is best served by significant transit services and a much different mode mix. We are still primarily cars, and when we say we have a pedestrian problem, most of those pedestrians are drivers as well.
But we're still, well, except that we have so many because of the hotels and tourists and lightning games, and so we have a high density of pedestrian traffic in this particular area. And then we have a major residential, mixed-use residential community on an island with only 2 bridges that have to transition through this area. Why aren't we talking about elevated pedestrian transitions from east to west?
Primarily because they don't work. The data shows
What if you
that
what if you blocked off access?
That is not the best design treatment right now based on the state of the practice. What I can share is there are 2 aspects here. One is we've suddenly got this land use that did not exist before,
Right.
and now there's traffic. That's something that our community has not been used to, no doubt about it. When you look at the amount of traffic there is relative to ourselves 15 years ago, there's a lot of traffic. When you look at it compared to other cities with similar land use, you go to Miami, you go to downtown portions of even Orlando and similar cities, it's similar traffic when you have special events.
I don't know. I think sitting on Bayshore from Howard Avenue all the way to get into the convention center is not similar to any place I ever traveled. I've traveled extensively all over the world.
You've driven in Miami?
Oh yeah, but for something so simple. Now usually when you have traffic like that, it's a much more complex problem and a much bigger scale problem rather than people walking across the street. I mean, it's,
absolutely.
So I think that's the thing is we have some what should be simple.
Yeah.
I mean, so what about having the convention center entrance on the east side of the road so that would be the entrance to the convention center? Is that what's driving the pedestrian traffic, is the convention center?
So it's driving the pedestrian traffic is multiple things. We've got the Riverwalk, the convention center, the streetcar, which has a lot of traffic, and then the garage, the Iorio garage, and then the arena. So there's traffic in both directions in the area. And I'd also like to share that when we had the community meetings, and we informed all community members when we had the community meetings, we did share that there is a longer term vision here that's moving slower than maybe anticipated. And that vision is the first phase of Water Street included what you saw right now. But there was a garage plan which was now being built now at Cumberland and Morgan.
Right.
That will automatically take the parking energy further up to Cumberland. That's what creates the biggest challenge right now, is people waiting to park and queuing out, and that creates a lot of the backups. So once that moves up, then once the ramp from Thea goes all the way to Meridian, it's going to move a lot of that traffic out of the Channel Side area and more onto Cumberland and Meridian and distribute that traffic. And then we also had another plan for some signage improvements and all for parking, which I understand was deferred for good reason. But it's a combination of these things that will make the situation a little bit better.
I guess I'm confused because you went down a totally direction that because I was focused in pedestrian vehicle separation and safety, and you went down about moving cars. So I guess I'm not catching the.
So they're both related. Where people park, once they park, they're walking to these destinations and crossing intersections. That's what's happening. So once those people are parking elsewhere within downtown, you're not going to see those pedestrian and vehicle conflicts.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So have we done a pedestrian traffic study to where people coming from and where they're going? Has that ever happened?
An origin destination
Yes.
study, we haven't, but what we've observed is most of the traffic is either foot traffic from hotels during events that come to the convention center or the arena, or people that park there during special events and then they're going either to the convention center, arena, or the Riverwalk.
I swear, one last question and then I'll shut up. Have you pursued any other solutions besides what is before us today, what we're talking about today?
We have looked at a few options on what to do. I don't remember specifically in the report what was mentioned. What we have put forth is a continuation of the...
Went maybe 1,000 rooms? Well, Tampa was ranked 1, 2 in hotel occupancy for the last year or two. That doesn't include, I know people in other areas want to bang their chest, we're filling the rooms. No. Everybody's filling the room mouth to word. When you go out, you speak, and people, where you from? Oh, thank you for visiting Tampa. Visiting Tampa, by the way, has done a marvelous job of bringing conventions. Maybe we want to blame them. But they're the ones that are bringing in the cashola to make people have jobs in downtown in different areas of town. And growth is something that's beautiful, but it's also very dangerous because you take away a lot of things that you took for granted, like the freedom to get from point A to point B in 15 minutes instead of an hour. And these are the things that we have to try to change now. So it's not, I'm not here to point fingers at no administration. I'm not here to point fingers at the council, but united, we made Tampa different, and we've made it more complex, and we've made it more difficult to live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I could add real quick, I think what you heard also in public comment was that I think everyone recognizes that we need to do something. And what we're proposing is that something is, with the resources that we have, the most suited to our context today. There are many ways to address this challenge. If we had the land, we could, maybe look at other treatments and things like that. But today, since we're growing fast and everyone agrees that we need to do something here, nothing is not an option, what we're proposing is with studied consideration.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you. I think every single one of us has seen a lovely pedestrian crosswalk and then see somebody 20 feet forward just crossing the road.
Mm-hmm.
Happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly what's happening here.
Right in front of my house.
It happens everywhere. Doesn't matter where you are, and you yell to the person in your car, "Why aren't you using the crosswalk?" Because people are people, and they do what they want to do. And in the state of Florida, as long as there's a crosswalk, you are allowed to cross, unless there's a signal. Is that correct? Yes. So I actually,
Can you repeat that statement again?
if you are pedestrian in the state of Florida, as long as there's a crosswalk that is signalized, or that is not signalized, you can walk whenever you want, and the cars technically have to stop for you.
Yeah.
And that's what's
Pedestrians
going.
have the right of way.
Pedestrians have the
Vehicles
right of
have to
way,
yield.
but once it's signalized, then people are supposed to stop. Supposed to being the imperative part of that. So I actually asked a police officer during, I don't know, maybe it was a gymnastics. Anyway, I was down there and I was watching this officer help people across. And I stopped and I just said, "Hey, what do you think about putting a light here and all this stuff?" And he was like, "That's not going to make any difference." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because people are going to walk anyway." It's like, even with a light, people will still walk. So I don't think that's a bad idea to even consider just even pedestrian lighting that particular part and see how that goes. But the problem is, and the way I see the actual problem is, if we want to be able to close off pedestrian access, we also have to close off car access to the roundabout at the convention center. That's the only way to do it. That's the only way. And I don't know how to reconfigure the convention center to have the drive-up entrance be somewhere else, but I think the long-term solution is that. The short-term solution, I think we still have to figure out, but the long-term solution, if we want to move cars from that area, is to take them out of that area, which is just such a waste for cars when it would be such a beautiful promenade for people to use. I mean, we see it all the time anyway. Also, as a cyclist, it is near impossible to cycle that part of the Riverwalk. It's very hard. So that's going to be like my push forward to the convention center staff who happens to be listening, and parks and you all, if that's not coming already, to really consider what else we can do to have a better spot for cars to enter, because that will help us with pedestrian access in this area. And I don't know the answer, but having the officer there all the time has also got to be not the greatest answer. So I don't really know where to leave this today. Councilmember Carlson left quickly, but I just, and as far as the convention center going across to the other side, I mean, there's nothing wrong with adding the convention center on the other side, but there's still going to be doors here, and people are going to take the path of least resistance every single time. And if it's easier for them to go down or open a door, go down the stairs and cross the street, that is what they will do.
I mean, I see it in front of my house. We have that problematic crosswalk. People won't walk mid-block due to the crosswalk. They'll cross it.
Yeah, and it is human nature. It is just human nature. And, you know, I see where you've tried to solve that by putting the fences, but we can't continue the fences because there's that driveway. So that might be maybe that's the solution. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That might be the area we need to look at next, is how do we move the convention center, car, bus, whatever traffic, what can we do there to really help move that out of the way? Is there a better solution in that regard? Because that is way too valuable of a real estate to keep for cars.
Yeah, so when the convention center, and they're in the process of doing kind of a master plan and all, that was feedback that we'd provided relative to that plaza and all. So if there is a next iteration to redevelop the convention center or expand the convention center, that would be a strong consideration at that time.
Oh, it's coming. The renovation of the convention center is coming. They're working on it.
We've been in discussion.
Yeah. So that's a good to know to put in the back of our hat for thinking about that going forward when we're really looking at the convention center. Is pedestrian. Yeah. Okay. Well.
Do you need both?
Thank you.
Where?
You need both.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, even just starting with the pedestrian light, seeing if that is actually. I even asked you in our meeting yesterday if there's a way we could just simply do test lights to see if it even works, and that's like not really feasible because of a million reasons. But even the possible test of a pedestrian light at the Dick Greco crossing to see if that could help. I think you'd still need an officer there for quite some time to really get people into the mode of it, but.
Well, if an officer was disciplined, wouldn't that just replicate a light?
I mean, the officer's there
but
all
I'm
the
saying
time.
if there was a disciplined, procedure.
I guess so.
So what I meant yesterday was, we know how the signals will work. In effect, what we're doing by signalizing water is moving the queue where it's not like if you get off of Harbor Island, you don't get to a point and you stop and you aren't queuing. We're moving that queue up 300 feet up to the bridge so that we can organize pedestrian activity and vehicle activity better between the bridge and Channel Side Drive. That's what we're doing. So in effect, that's what's happening. That queue where it starts right now because any vehicle coming off of Franklin Bridge and Harbor Island Bridge and onto Franklin Street is a random arrival until it gets to Channel Side Drive. So that signal doesn't know whether vehicles are coming or not. So people are queuing up there. What we're doing effectively is moving that queue 300 feet back up to the Harbor Island Bridge, because the activity between the Harbor Island Bridge and Channel Side Drive, pedestrian and vehicle conflict specifically, is very erratic. And so simulating that is pretty straightforward because the rest of the grid works in a certain way. This is just extending that grid back.
I lied.
Go ahead.
If we invest in the cost of installing this, and in 12 months we find the unintended consequences is just not doing what was intended, or is problematic, how difficult is it to reverse course?
So we can always adjust signal timings. It depends on what the unintended
But
consequences.
I mean, how difficult of a how much money is installing these two lights cost? And how much would it take to uninstall them?
Uninstalling them costs much lesser, but the cost, what is our cost right now for the two lights?
We don't have a design yet, but I would suspect it'll be in the neighborhood of $500,000.
Okay, thank you.
I'm so cheap, and I hate to pay for parking, that I walk through here all the time. Because first, I don't want to pay for parking. Second, I need to walk. And third, I'm not adding to, if we're going to promote a walkable city, I want to set an example of it. But, having a light there, I don't know how much difference it's going to make. Councilmember Hurtak talked about that. Those have worked, 4-way stops or 3-way stop, however we can put it here. If that would help, it's a cheaper alternative. I don't know. We're a victim of our own success. Councilmember Miranda mentioned that, and that bridge going on and off Harbor Island is just narrow 2 lanes. It's a very tricky spot. And when Harbor Island was developed, you had the convention center coming in, but you didn't have everything else there. You might have had convention center traffic and some people that were, living on Harbor Island and whatnot, but now it's just gotten so busy with Water Street and everything else. I'm not supportive of a traffic light. We've heard from residents on Harbor Island, a couple people this morning. I think it might cause more havoc and gridlock. Perhaps we need to look at other alternatives before there. I like the roundabout idea, the small roundabout. I like putting stop signs if that works. Having an officer there 24/7 or at peak time. That's the old way of doing things. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. It's going to be expensive, to have a person there. It's a lot of time. So I know we're not making any motions today and you're just giving us a report, but I would avoid putting a street light there. So, Councilman Miranda.
I can tell you that one item that you spoke about that makes sense is additional parking where you're going to put a parking area. That takes some traffic out. And I don't know, and I'm not an engineer, and I don't want to be one, but where the parking garage is at, just on the north part of the convention center, I don't know if you can build because of the weight going down, a couple of more, 2 or 3 decks higher. That would take a lot of cars out that are at the convention center that don't have to move. So I think parking is one of the main things. When there's an event at where and how, they're successful, and thank God they are. But that creates an enormous amount. I would imagine that all the parking in downtown is taken by that, one way or another, including the city parking lots. So there's got to be something to be done. Either they got to take the trolley and move from Ybor City to here. I don't know, but there's got to be something done to get it because it's dangerous, real dangerous. For both. No one in a car wants to hit somebody walking. And I don't believe so anyway. And these are the things that we're dealt with. Success has cost our problem.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon. All right, item number 62.
Okay, I don't know if I need to say
All
my
right.
name again for the record, but Brandon Campbell, Mobility Department. I have some maps to distribute.
Ms. Van Loan, are you here for 65 and 66?
No, sir.
Okay, because we got rid of that, so, all right. Not got rid of, but yeah. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Is this it? Is this the last one?
No, we have item 63, and then we have a lot of new business.
Okay, I'll go quickly. I distributed a map with all the different right-of-way and parcels and easements as well that are related to the West Riverwalk and the West River Multimodal Network project that is building most of that. But before I address those specifically, I did want to share, I did not distribute this one, but just as a reminder, I know you all have seen this map several times. But there are some segments along the Riverwalk itself that are not part of the build project that was recently approved. So I just wanted to make sure that there is an understood distinction between those that are part of the build project and those that aren't, though they are all on that map that I did distribute to you all. There were 44 different parcels or easements or segments of right-of-way that are addressed by this. Most of them are finished in terms of any sort of negotiation. But I did want to talk real quick about those that are in the gap. On your map, that would be 5A and 5B, 6 and 7. Each of those is in some stage of modification or negotiation between our legal department and the attorneys of the respective property owners there. And that, again, is a function of them not being part of the build-funded project. Without getting into the details of those ongoing negotiations, I did want to mention that we are planning for interim connections within those should the separately pursued segments timeline not completely match up with the build project. And that's illustrated pretty well, I think, by the existing configuration from the Arabelle property, which is 5A, 5B. There is a connection right now that was built to that Riverwalk segment from the Cleveland Street corridor. And so whether we end up needing to connect in those sorts of ways to maintain continuity post-build project for an interim configuration remains to be seen. Did you have?
Councilmember Hurtak.
What does that mean?
Okay.
Like in layman's terms?
So because those three segments are not being pursued by our contractor, by Haskell, the timeline is parallel but separate. So if there's say a month here between, or 6 months, most likely not 6 months, but if there's a short interval where we are waiting for them, the completion of, say, the related segment, which is 7, to be completed after our build project, we will connect via Keller Avenue or Parker Street, or as more or less an MOT, similar to what was done when the Convention Center renovation and addition was under construction, and we signed for it around on Channel Side and then down Franklin Street. So just wanted you to be aware that those are separate pursuits, but certainly related to the Riverwalk itself. As far as the parcels go that are part of the build project, on your map you will see on segment or parcel number 8, that's Plant Park, as well as 9A, B, and C, the easement across the Tampa property. Those are currently, right now, the ground lease for Plant Park is planned to come before you next week. I know there's been some discussion among council about what the hourly restrictions have been or will be moving forward. The previous lease had a dusk to dawn restriction there, and the current arrangements are for a midnight to 5 a.m. restriction. And I do believe that Councilman Clendenin had asked UTampa about particular events that might allow for access during those hours. I don't know if you.
Sure, yeah. So I did have a very intense conversation. It was a very interesting conversation. And so, yeah, there's it would be midnight to 5 a.m. Was it 5 a.m.? I don't know, midnight, 5 a.m. restrictions. And we would also have the ability to utilize the entire portion of the Riverwalk for special events, like Super Bowl comes to town and we wanted to activate it. It was late, let's say it's on a different time zone and stuff. Special events, yeah, exactly, special events. So so we'd have that caveat in there as well. I believe that legal and the UT, Scott, y'all are discussing it, or somebody's discussed it to make sure that's incorporated into the agreement.
I don't
Rebecca was in here, but
Okay.
Rebecca from legal
Okay.
is discussing with her.
Very good. But it seems to be a reasonable approach to that property.
Yes, so the ground lease that will come before you does cover parcel 8. Parcels, or I guess I should say easements 9A and B, have already been approved for execution by you all, and I believe they're waiting for the remainder of discussions related to Tampa to get that signed and back over to us. Also, moving north, parcel or easement 10A is in front of Tampa Prep. You'll note that it is hashed out because at one point there was an hourly restriction. That is no longer in place. What we have recently installed a fence along their property. You will see an amendment to that easement come before you in the coming days. I don't know if it's on your agenda yet, but no part of that will address hourly restrictions because those are no longer in place.
Unless the city wants to.
True, fair enough.
Councilmember Miranda, did you
Oh, I'm
have?
sorry.
I'm sorry. Anybody else? Anything else to your presentation?
Just one last note, the properties also along the Blake High School and Stewart Middle School frontage are shaded out, but those restrictions are no longer in place either. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
And I should know this answer because we've been briefed on it so many times. But I get asked about this Riverwalk constantly, and it's the staging and the elements of construction, what's coming in first, second, third, and fourth, and kind of a timeline. Vic or somebody else?
I do have Nina, our project manager, who may be able to speak to the order of construction that's anticipated. I know we're about to 60% design submittals, but I don't know if phasing has been completely.
The on-land sections are probably going to proceed.
What's your name for the record?
Hi, I'm sorry, Nina Mobilo. I'm the West Riverwalk project manager from our mobility department. The on-land segments will be constructed first. That's probably going to be the Platt Street right-of-way, Rome Avenue, Columbus Drive. Due to the fact that the permitting with the Army Corps of Engineers for the Riverwalk itself, the 2 underpass pedestrian bridges at Platt and Brorine, and the living shorelines in the river, that permitting is going to take longer. So this is a design-build project. We're constricted by the life of the funding, which expires in 2027. So they're going to be designing and building all the multiple sections at multiple times. I did bring the schedule with me today. And
So basically what we should anticipate by 27 is through the Ridgewood, Columbus, Rome, and is Platt part of this project?
Yes. Correct.
It is.
Platt
Okay, so it
Street
is
from
fun.
Rome.
It is part of this funded project. Okay.
Platt Street from Rome to Bayshore.
Okay.
It's virtually 5 miles, and it should all be complete in early 2027.
Okay, very good. That's very aggressive and very nice. I like to hear that. One other question. I know Vic, you and I have spoken about this, and it's about placemaking to ensure that we have, if there's some type of ability to have concessions or,
Correct.
a trailer like, like the Straz has or something like that, so that people can have a place to grab a soda or a slice of pizza or something periodically along the way when we have food deserts. Also restroom facilities. Is there any accommodations for that?
So not as part of this project, there aren't, but with the concessions, we'll also discuss restrooms with the Parks Department or Economic Development.
Okay, but so is there any in this design element of
No
creating
restroom.
placemaking for concessions at all?
So there is an element of placemaking in that at certain parts along the Riverwalk, to the extent you can call it placemaking, there are overlooks and things like that. There's living shorelines.
I mean, I sure would like to see them, have at least, as they're designing this, have something at least reserved and periodically along this.
Sure.
I mean, because this is the time to do it. It's not gonna get any easier than right now. And if you're 60% in, man, go through and find 3 or 4 places along this route that maybe you can bump out or have a place that at some time in the future that we could plug something in if we needed to.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you. I was told there were going to be no outlooks because we couldn't afford them. Overlooks.
So the overlooks that were presented in some of the renderings, we wouldn't be able to afford those. So, but as part of the Riverwalk itself, there are going to be sections that are wider,
Okay,
parts that are not as wide as well.
Okay.
And so but in terms of the placemaking piece of it, that's something that we would have to partner with Parks on and speak to the concessions and all. There are several opportunities.
Well, we don't really have a
Excuse me,
concessions right now.
this is my turn. I let you have your turn.
You jumped into me, I wasn't finished.
He called my
Oh,
name.
did she? Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah,
No, it's
Guido
all good.
called
It's all
my
good. It's all
name.
good, it's all good.
Sorry, Chairman Maniscalco called my name. So, additionally, I'm hoping, I'm gonna lay it down right now and say, I don't think that this is an appropriate, I know that we have wet zoned the other side of the river. I don't think that this is an appropriate side to wet zone, mainly because of the schools and the private entities. There's not a lot of, consumer areas along here, so, I just want you to keep that in mind, because I will not support alcoholic zoning along the Riverwalk on this side. As far as the Platt Street and Rome, are these separated, divided bike lanes? Because if they're just sharrows, it's no point.
The pedestrian underpass bridges are 15 feet wide between the railings. They're for pedestrian and bicyclists only.
No, I'm talking about the streets themselves. Platt and Rome, those streets. They're protected bike lanes, correct?
Platt Street, correct, where possible. There are small segments where there won't be raised separators.
On Rome, that is.
On Rome and.
Rome is the most dangerous. So I don't know how you're gonna make that safe. Sharrows are not safe on Rome,
Yeah.
period.
So there's definitely not going to be sharrows. There's going to be bike lanes, whether they're separated, median separated or not, or if they're separated by some other type of tactical urbanism, we don't know. That is primarily on Rome. Platt Street already has the room and the ability to redesign for a separated
Okay,
bike.
yeah, and that, I'm fine with that, but again, if you're saying this is a family-friendly Riverwalk, then you need to absolutely, so the way I like to visualize it, and the way I will expect you to visualize it, is a 3-year-old walking in the bike lane. Can a 3-year-old walk in the bike lane? Would you look at that and scream and run toward that child? Or would you say, that's okay?
There are off-road wide sidewalks for pedestrians. There's one small area on Platt Street near the railroad tracks where the bikes and peds would share the separated facility.
Yeah, and sharing is fine. I just want to make sure that in no place where we're considering this to be a Riverwalk, that we simply have a line for a cyclist. I just want to make sure that this is as family-friendly, as the other side of the river. Sure. As possible, because this is, I'm thrilled that Platt Street will have it separated. I would love to personally see when you have the design done for Rome, I'd like to look at that. Sure. And my other curiosity is how you're gonna cross Columbus. I'm fascinated by this because that's a really tight bridge, and I have no idea how you're gonna do that safely for a cyclist family.
South side of the Columbus Bridge, there's gonna be a shared bike and ped facility, and the existing pedestrian path is gonna remain there along the railing on the south side. There's gonna be lane reduction with 1 lane eastbound, 1 lane westbound over the bridge.
Okay, so that will solve that. So similar to how Cass is done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And separately, as part of a separate but concurrent effort, we'll be signalizing Rome and Columbus.
Oh, that'll be a great addition. Okay. Well, thank you. That answers several of my questions, but I still, when you're done with the Rome design, I would really love to see it. If you could just send me an email so I can just take a look, because Rome is really scary. I have ridden it as a cyclist during COVID. I wouldn't do it now.
Yeah. The bicyclists will be protected everywhere where we have adequate width, and we're prohibited on the federal project from obtaining additional right-of-way is not included.
Councilmember Clendenin.
I just want to be clear, I wasn't talking about wet zoning. I'm talking about place to buy a Coke or a piece of pizza.
Oh, no, I understand that, but I'm just saying,
Yeah, okay.
I don't
No,
think this is the appropriate side for wet
I agree
zone.
with that, but I just, again, it's just the deserts of, you can't find a place to drink or something or have a piece of pizza, because you're dealing with human beings, so human beings have needs.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last item of the day Mr. Mulkey is gonna tell us why trees were cut, who ordered it, why they ordered it, and how much tree cutting was done.
Afternoon
It says
again,
63,
Council.
but it's
Tony
a-
Mulkey, Parks and
yeah.
Recreation Director.
I know you gave a written report, but it was requested that you be here in person, so I don't know.
I'm glad to do so. So just want to come in and respond to the motion. I'm not sure we necessarily capture all the activities that have been observed and reported, but from the city's perspective with the Urban Forestry Division, the activities that are happening through there are all work order generated after an inspection. So those are the things that are directly dealing with the life safety issues of hanging limbs, of trees that are failing. We do not cut down healthy trees. And sometimes people are disappointed by that, but we do not cut down healthy trees. So provided some information about what work has been accomplished and what work is still scheduled out there through the work orders, both with hurricane response as well as our traditional service that we provide. So I'm happy to answer any questions related.
Any questions, Councilmember?
I can tell you
Miranda
this,
Hurtak?
right at West Tampa, just the other side of, between Lincoln and Spruce, there is a tree that luckily no one was there when it fell, but it had to be a truck this big, and the branches, when they fell, they broke off, and you can see inside, it's still there, by the way, the branches have been taken off, but it sits about 6 feet tall, and the only thing that was holding that thing up was air, because the whole inside of the tree was gone. It was rotted out inside. Nobody knew that. But maybe there's a way we can find out and have people check them around, especially parks and recreation areas, that these trees are solid inside, because if not, I don't want to face what's coming.
It's a fair request. We try to
Yeah,
get
just to
those
look
as
at
much
them
as possible.
and check them out, because I believe that there was 4 or 5 of them there. The only one that's standing now is the big trunk of the big one that fell, that was completely ate up inside.
Yeah.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you. I think any of those trees that were slightly hollow, Milton took care of those, but I could be wrong. So we did get a lot of upsets that we weren't aware of in terms of trees coming down. And I asked Mr. Mulkey this during my prep meeting, and I'm just going to do it again in public, is just making sure that, I mean, looking at the numbers in your report of how many tree calls you get, and then add on what happened during Milton. And so I asked you, do you have enough people in your department and enough resources to handle the tree trimming? You gave a very diplomatic answer, but I'm going to let you try again.
All right. So I'm happy to report that during this fiscal year, we were awarded additional funding for equipment and staffing for tree trimming. That moves us towards our goal of being a little more proactive in our services. We supplement our in-house services either for the scale of the project, like if we don't have cranes and things like that, but our tree contractors have easier access to that. So we do have contracts with 3 different tree providers that during the storm, obviously that amount has gone up. So we do supplement what our capacity is with that, and we've been able to grow our capacity this year. We're working on it, and we were approved, but we're still trying to recruit and procure that equipment. So we are working towards growing. We do realize we're very reactive on a lot of our response now. We do have some vision of being more proactive and being able to serve the urban tree canopy a little more effectively. And we've taken a step.
Excellent. And obviously everyone is reactive right now. I mean, Milton, there's no other way to be. But now that as we're coming out of it, we do want to be proactive, and one area is trees. So I would say that with the addition that you've gotten, about how far are you percentage-wise? Are you 30% to where you'd like to be eventually? Are you 50% to where you'd like to be eventually?
Well, part of that's going to be determined once we are able to recruit those positions. We've had
Say you have them.
Okay. I would anticipate we're probably 30 to 40% closer to where we want to be.
So then, as this next budget comes up, we need to consider more. It's just basically, I just like to file that away. And I know that the community is really talking about trees. So if they want to show that energy and passion toward trees, that's an area where they can advocate.
And we do have an internal strategic plan that we're kind of following and seeing where we can tick off some of those goals within there. And this brings us closer. So we are making progress.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mulkey. That concludes our agenda. All right, we're going to go to new business. I'm going to pass it off to the vice chair.
Pro tem.
Chair Pro Tem.
Chair Pro Tem recognizes Chairman Maniscalco.
Thank you very much.
Give
I'd
that
l-
man a gavel. He smiles when he gets it.
Yeah, he does.
He activates.
Yeah.
I would like to present a commendation, make a motion, to present a commendation off-site to the State Attorney's Office Victim Assistance Program recognizing National
Second.
Crime Victims Week, which is April 6th through April 12th this year.
We have a motion from Chairman Maniscalco, a second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you, and I would like to present a commendation off-site to the City of Tampa Black History Committee on their 37th anniversary on February 17th,
Second.
2025 at the Tampa Theater.
We have a motion from Chairman Maniscalco, a second from Councilman Miranda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
That's it. Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Chairman. I have one motion for commendation to be presented to Ron Rotella, who had been a development official for 6 Tampa mayors between 1965 and 1983 before Mayor Greco hired him to be a development coordinator in 1995. Ron also served as executive director to the West Shore Alliance for many years. I would request that said commendation be presented at City Council on March 27, 2025, under ceremonials.
We have a motion from Councilmember Miranda, second Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. How's he doing, sir? Yeah. He's a legendary guy, so.
Yeah,
Anything
it
else?
really
sir?
is. That's
No.
it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I made a motion on January 15th, and this is the motion. I move to have legal amend section 15-104 code to add the North Franklin Street corridor to the existing code. Boundaries are East K Street to the south, North Florida Avenue to the east, East Oak Avenue to the north, and North Tampa Street to the west. Staff has requested more time, so I'm changing the date for first reading from February 6th, 2025 to February 20th, 2025. And I have spoken to folks at Tampa Heights in that neighborhood association. They know this change is coming.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Hurtak. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Anything else? Mr. Shelby?
A reminder to the council, and we'll pass it along to those people who are not here, and a reminder to the public, there are 4 council meetings next week. You have a special call workshop on Tuesday at 9. You have a settlement agreement to consider, Florida Statute 70.51 at 5:01 p.m. And then you have your regular meetings on the 28th on that Thursday, that would be the 30th, excuse me. The special calls are on the 28th. The regular workshop is on the 30th at 9 a.m. And then you have the night meeting, the alcoholic beverage night meeting, and also lease agreements with the University of Tampa at 5:01. So just a reminder to you and to the public. Thank you.
We have a motion received from Councilmember Henderson. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.
Wish it was